Pamela, a 17-year-old homeless girl, shivers as she walks down the dark, rain-soaked streets. Her oversized, tattered hoodie barely shields her from the cold. She hasn't eaten in 2 days, and her stomach aches with hunger. Every door she's knocked on has been slammed in her face. She approaches a well-lit house, hoping for kindness. When the owner answers, their expression hardens. "Get lost, beggar," they snap, shutting the door. Pamela lowers her head, used to rejection but still stung by the cruelty. With nowhere to go, Pamela huddles under a bus stop, clutching a faded photograph of her late mother. The memory of her mother's warmth contrasts the harshness of the streets. Tears mix with the raindrops on her face as she whispers, "Mom, I don't know how much longer I can do this." Miles away, Mr. Harrison, a wealthy businessman in his 60s, sits alone in his grand mansion. The sound of rain and distant thunder fills the night until a weak knock at the door breaks the silence. Asterisk, asterisk. The elderly butler, Mr. Clarkson, frowns as he looks through the peephole. "It's just a street girl," he mutters, hesitating to open the door. But Mr. Harrison, curious, gets up himself. When he opens the door, he sees Pamela soaked, trembling, and looking like she could collapse at any moment. His first instinct is to close the door, but something in her tired yet pleading eyes stops him. "Please," Pamela whispers, I just need food. I won't steal anything, I promise." Mr. Harrison hesitates. He isn't known for taking in strangers, but something about her reminds him of someone from his past. He steps aside. "Come in," he says gruffly. As soon as she steps inside, warmth surrounds her, a stark contrast to the freezing rain outside. Her knees buckle, and she falls to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. As Pamela eats hungrily at the dining table, Mr. Harrison watches her. Memories of his younger days, when he too struggled, come rushing back. He had worked tirelessly to become the man he was, but he had forgotten what true hardship looked like. "You can stay the night," he says, surprising even himself. Pamela's eyes widen in disbelief. For the first time in years, someone has shown her kindness. Later in the hallway, Mr. Clarkson shakes his head. "Sir, this isn't safe. She could be dangerous. These street kids." Pamela, still sitting at the table, overhears the butler's words. Her heart sinks. No matter where she goes, she is always seen as a burden or threat. "She's just a girl," Mr. Harrison says firmly. "A girl who needs help." His words surprise even himself. He never used to be this trusting. That night, Pamela takes a warm bath, the first one in years. She stares at her reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing herself. For the first time, she feels human again. The next day, Mr. Harrison gives her a set of new clothes. Pamela holds them to her chest, overwhelmed. "I don't deserve this," she murmurs. "Yes, you do," Mr. Harrison responds. One night, Pamela wanders into Mr. Harrison's study and finds an old newspaper article. It's about his missing daughter. The article is dated 20 years ago. Mr. Harrison's only daughter, Isabella, vanished without a trace. He had been searching for her ever since. Pamela suddenly realizes he isn't just helping her out of kindness. He's filling a void in his heart. Mr. Harrison enrolls her in school, paying for her education. Pamela, once homeless, now has hope. Determined to prove herself, Pamela excels in her studies. Mr. Harrison watches with pride. Mr. Harrison's nephew, Ethan, visits the mansion and questions Pamela's intentions. "She's using you," he warns. Pamela considers leaving to avoid causing trouble, but Mr. Harrison stops her. "You are not a charity case. You are family," he tells her. Years later, Pamela graduates with honors. At her ceremony, she sees Mr. Harrison in the audience, tears in his eyes. Pamela starts a foundation for homeless youth, ensuring no one goes through what she did. At a grand event, Pamela publicly thanks Mr. Harrison for saving her life. He smiles, finally feeling like he has a daughter again, As Pamela hugs him, Mr. Harrison whispers, "You saved me too?" Pamela's foundation flourished, helping thousands of homeless youth find shelter, education, and a second chance at life. She worked tirelessly, pouring her heart into every case, ensuring no child ever felt as lost as she once had. Mr. Harrison, now older and more frail, watched with immense pride. He had built an empire of wealth, but Pamela was his true legacy. However, not everyone shared their happiness. Ethan, Mr. Harrison's envious nephew, never fully accepted Pamela. He watched as she grew closer to his uncle, gaining his trust, admiration, and even love, the very things Ethan had taken for granted. His resentment festered, and one day, he saw an opportunity to strike. One evening, Pamela returned to the mansion to find Mr. Harrison sitting in his study, looking troubled. On his desk was a folder filled with documents, bank statements, legal papers, and a shocking revelation. Mr. Harrison's assets were mysteriously disappearing. Funds had been drained, properties sold off, and investments suddenly collapsing. "We're being sabotaged," he murmured, running a hand through his silver hair. Pamela's mind raced. Who would do this? Then the answer came: Ethan. Digging deeper, Pamela discovered fraudulent transactions in Ethan's name. He had been slowly siphoning money, selling shares, and planning to leave Mr. Harrison bankrupt. The truth was undeniable. When confronted, Ethan didn't deny it. He laughed. "Did you really think you could replace me?" His voice was laced with venom. "You're nothing, Pamela. Just a street rat who got lucky." Pamela clenched her fists. "This isn't about money for me, Ethan. It's about family." Ethan scoffed. "Well, you won't have one for long." Before Pamela could react, Ethan revealed his final move. He had already filed a lawsuit to challenge Mr. Harrison's will, claiming she was manipulating him. If Ethan won, Pamela would lose everything, including the foundation. Determined to protect what Mr. Harrison built, Pamela fought back. She gathered evidence, exposed Ethan's fraud, and stood before the court to defend the man who saved her life. In a dramatic courtroom battle, Ethan's lies unraveled. Witnesses, former employees, and even Mr. Clarkson testified against him. When the final verdict was announced, Ethan was stripped of his inheritance and sentenced for financial fraud. As he was taken away in handcuffs, he shot Pamela a hateful glare. "This isn't over," he hissed. But Pamela wasn't afraid. She turned to Mr. Harrison, who squeezed her hand with teary eyes. "You're my daughter in every way that matters," he whispered. Years later, Pamela stood before a crowd at a grand charity gala. The Pamela Harrison Foundation had grown into a nationwide movement, changing countless lives. As she spoke, her voice trembled with emotion. "I was once just a girl on the streets, invisible and unwanted. But one man saw me, believed in me, and gave me a chance. Mr. Harrison, you didn't just save me. You made me who I am." The audience rose in applause. Mr. Harrison, now older but still filled with warmth, smiled proudly. "And you, my dear, gave me something I thought I lost: family." As the night ended, Pamela hugged him, whispering, "I will never let you down." Mr. Harrison chuckled. "You never have." And in that moment, they both knew love, not blood, made them family.